Welcome, everybody. My name is Kelli Shedd. I'm the Executive Director with AIA Maine, and I'm here with Timothy Locke today, and we'll be doing a question and answer session and a short presentation on the 2026 Design Awards process, and specifically the common application and the value and how to go about using that as part of your tools to submit. And has anybody here already submitted an application, or are folks waiting until after today to submit?
We've been waiting just to see the process.
Sure, that's great. I thought that might be the case for a lot of folks today. Wonderful.
Let me know when you're ready, Kelly.
All right. I was going to say, Tim, why don't I hand it over to you to introduce yourself and start your presentation.
So I know a lot of the people on the call. My name's Tim. I am management partner, one of three principals at Opal in Belfast, Maine. And what we're going to try to do today is I'm just going to quite quickly just give you guys a brief on what the Common App is. Some of you may already know what the status is of Maine's adoption of the Common App, what AIA National's status is on the adoption transition of the Common App. And then I'm just going to share my screen to look at some examples of use of the Common App from award submissions that we've done internally in past years, both for national and for AIA Maine. And then I think the goal is to just have this then be a kind of more free-form Q&A so that people can we can do a little bit of demystification about what this actually is, and try to leave as much time as we can for that. So I'll try to be as brief as possible to leave plenty of time for questions. So I'm going to share my screen and do the kind of usual thing where you all get to see my messy desktop for a second before I find the slide deck and then play it. All right, I think we're good. So, the Common App and awards has been part of AIA National for about a half decade. Basically, it is a framework that has a name that makes it seem different than the Framework for Design Excellence, but it's really just part of that same overall initiative. So in 2017, when the board of directors, at AIA National stated a position on the science of climate change, they also adopt revisions to the Code of Ethics that included actionable rules on obligations to the environment. And during that time, COTE National, which is now called COTE LG, a COTE leadership group, which is a committee that I'm on currently, developed this framework. They developed what it was initially called the COTE Top 10, and now is called the Framework for Design Excellence, mainly because it shared a name with the COTE Top 10 Awards, which predated it. So that's why the change of name. But it was also intentional because we wanted to create a framework nationally that could serve to declare an urgent imperative for carbon reduction. It would transition day-to-day practice by adopting a kind of universal framework that could serve as a platform for awards submissions. So try to knit together what we saw as a gap between sustainable design and design itself, that there could be a way to kind of manage the content and criteria of a project that would help yield kind of more ecologically appropriate designs. So beyond that point has really been in this kind of phase of adoption. So state to state, of course, because individual states have their own awards programs, have adopted parts of the framework kind of at different paces. But from 2021 and beyond, a version of the Common App has been required as a baseline for any COTE Top 10 submission at national and other national awards. So for those of us that submit to national awards, none of this is probably that new, surprising, anything. We've been having to do this for years. we were honored enough last year to win a Code Top 10 award, and that I can trust me that that submission process is far more robust than anything we're asking at AIA Maine. AIA Maine has offered the option to submit for award consideration using the Common App. For now, this will be the second year as an optional choice on how you would report on that same framework for design excellence. So the takeaway here is that all the Common App does is collect the framework for design excellence criteria into one location. Right now, within AIA Maine's award submissions, you can choose to not do that, but in that case, you're going to have to report narratively on some amount of content in the framework for design excellence anyway. So it doesn't get you out of engaging with this framework. All it does is collect all of that information into a single spreadsheet that then the reviewers can review. Also new this year, just so everyone knows, there is a technical juror on the AIA Maine Awards jury this year. So there is expertise on the jury for knowing what these framework measures are, being able to communicate what a kind of what a success in any of these individual measures might be to the rest of the design jury. So that might help you kind of understand whether it would be a good idea to choose to use the Common App or not. So just as the framework itself, just for anybody who doesn't know, it's just a set of criteria for assessing building performance in the context of a changing climate. It gives you examples and tools on the AIA website. I realize now that I have an old graphic of the AIA website, which has been redesigned in the past year and a half, but it's basically the same information that can be used both within and after the design process. If you're doing it during the design process, what we're talking about today will be far, far easier. Obviously, we're in award submission time, so you probably didn't, or otherwise you wouldn't be here today, but that's okay. We can get through the questions later. And we've developed all these tools to do it, right? So as I talked about earlier, these tools there's the Code Top 10 Super Spreadsheet. That's the original kind of master spreadsheet that has all the criteria, every single metric you could want, and all of the 10 measures in it. It is an excellent tool to kind of navigate the design process in a project if you're looking at trying to design a sustainable building. But we're not going to talk about that today. It's a free download from the AIA website. I'll show you what it looks like if you haven't seen it. We tend to do these on any project that we know we're going to have to do a Common App submission on, because literally it's asking you for the exact same content, and you can just then copy paste it in. You don't have to do that, but it makes it very easy. There's online guidance and award-winning precedent projects. So if you want to see how projects that were awarded at the national level fared in these against this design framework, those are available on the AIA national website. I'd recommend people take a look at that. And then there's the Common App spreadsheet for use in award submissions. That is a free download as well when you decide you're going to submit a project. So you can, if you guys are submitting for awards this year, you've probably already downloaded it, or you could download it still. That comes from AIA Maine, and it's been available for free use from AIA National. It was made by Code LG to all of the chapters and cohorts around the country. And lastly, this is new as of last fall. Some of you may have noticed this if you're DDX signatories. The 2030 commitment now has the exact same criteria and all the same questions, all the same numerical metrics within DDX under the Code Top 10 tab. So now you can do it totally online if you want. If you want to save all that information and not have it in an Excel file, you can do it here too, especially if you're already a DDX signatory and are already reporting on DDX. This is a great way to do it. And actually now all of the national awards just require you to do it here, because then they can just go to that database. You don't have to submit a file at all. actually becoming much smoother at the national level, and maybe in future years at AIA Maine we could seek to adopt that same model, because it does take the number of steps down even further than the Common App, which is great. So it measures these 10 measures. You guys probably already know that if you've kind of looked into either the Common App or the AIA.org website. There's design for integration, design for equitable community, design for ecology, design for water, design for economy, design for energy, design for wellness, design for resources, design for change, and design for discovery. Some of these are narrative and not numerical. So sometimes that's a kind of sticking point for people. They're like, I don't know if I measured all these things in every one of these categories. That's totally fine. You don't always have to have done all of it. And several of them are mostly narrative. All of them have some amount of narrative description in them. And we'll look at that in a second. Some people will also ask, well, we're in rural Maine. How would I score well on a design for equitable community? You might not. The intent of this framework was never that a project would likely score well on all measures. Certainly there's some aspects of urban projects that will score higher in certain categories, and some aspects of more remote rural project that will score higher in other categories. And that is by design. No project is going to likely be able to score full points in every category. I'm using the word points loosely because it is still a design awards. Like, these are not, there's no hard and fast like scoring system. It's just to show how a project compares to benchmarks that are established and reestablished every year through kind of common survey of the projects that are built. It's not about yielding a score that either makes you an award winner or not. That's why there's only one technical juror. They're there to kind of describe how a project's doing to jurors that may not be as well educated. So I never, when I've been in these presentations before, I've also been technical juror on many juries. I'm actually a technical juror right now on AIA National Architecture Award. So it is never our role to try to say this project's disqualified. It's to try to demystify it. And I would always encourage people to not get stuck at a hurdle that is, oh my God, there's no way that our project, which you think is really great, is going to be good enough across all of these 10 different measures to be sufficient for award submission. I would really encourage you to not have that kind of lens of thinking. I'm sure all of your projects are amazing in at least one or many of these categories. And that's the intent of the framework, is to try to highlight that, not to try to kind of diminish projects because they weren't able to do certain things. That's not the point. So that's the framework for design excellence. I did want to just show an image of what each of those different tools are for everyone. And then I'll actually have them open in Excel. So I'll get out of this screen share and open it up so you guys can kind of see it more thoroughly. So the Common App is literally an Excel spreadsheet. When you open it up, it has two tabs. There's a reporting tab, and then there's a kind of inputs tab. The inputs tab is long because it has all 10 measures. And then the reporting tab just draws the narrative portions out from this tab. And as part of the AIA Maine Design Awards framework, if you elect to use the Common App, you would just send this in as part of your submission, the raw Excel file. And it's very easy. It gives you this kind of really cool spider graph, which is fun. We have collaborative firms that don't know anything about sustainability that we work with sometimes that just get really jazzed on how they can make this spider graph as much of a circle as possible. If that's your motivation, that's super cool, but it's really hard to make it do that. I'll just tell you that. But basically, you just have all these inputs, you fill it out. It's not that technically challenging. The DDX version of this, if you guys are inputting your projects in DDX, I'll show you what that looks like. There's now this little Coat Top 10 tab next to the 2030 commitment tabs in any of your individual projects that you might have input into the database. And when you click on that tab, it essentially gives you just an online version. You see the 10 measures across the top of exactly the same thing that's in the Common App and is in the super spreadsheet, which you'll see next. The last one and the longest standing one is this. This is now a document, this is now a file, sorry, that is 8 years old. It started when the Framework for Design Excellence was originally kind of developed, and it just spreads those same exact 10 measures with the same exact reporting criteria into tabs, an individual tab for each one. We find this helpful. You don't have to use it. We find it helpful because it actually shows you the benchmark targets in it. You can kind of see this even on the first openings sheet over here on the side. So it allows us to know like ahead of time when we're designing a project, like how we're doing against the benchmark, which is nice. But again, like they literally are all the same information, all three of those. So there is no obligation to do them all. You might find it useful, might not. It depends a lot on whether you're considering submitting for national awards or not. So what I'm going to do now is get out of this screen share. I'm going to open up the just individual versions of this, and I might start with, see where it is. Okay, I'm going to start with a Common App that we submitted on an award-winning project last year for AIA Maine, just to share with you what it looks like as a fully filled out document. Give me a second. It's this one here. Can everybody see my screen? Give a thumbs up, Kelly. All right. So this is a project that was an award winner last year. And essentially, you can see the spider graph at the top, how it looks different from a Common App where we hadn't filled out any information. You know, you start seeing it kind of increase in size across the different measures. And essentially, you're just going through the beginning is just basic information that we all have on any of our projects. There's some project summaries, client impact statements, statement of design excellence, basically an overarching conceptual reason why you think this project meets the intent of the Framework for Design Excellence. And then you get into kind of each of the different more metric-based measures beyond that, and you just kind of go through and fill it out. It does a lot, if not all of the calculations for you. So you don't have to do a bunch of math as long as you have kind of the raw data from the project. It's pretty straightforward. You know, if you do this, you will need things like, just go to one, like you will need to know, for instance, what energy code you submitted on so it can pull the correct benchmark that you're being compared against. You will need to know what your overall energy use was. That is something, if you have an energy model of the project, you're going to have to do that in order to do this Common App. And it asks for other things like, for instance, LCA information, if it has been conducted. It's going to ask you how you conducted it. You know, what software did you use? But it also does allow you to access or gives you suggestions for accessing online tools to do some of this. So if you have never done an LCA, there are free online versions of this that are compatible with the Common App, and it'll give you data that you can use in here. So sometimes that's a little bit of a hurdle for people. Like, well, I've never done a life cycle assessment. I don't know what these questions mean exactly. The Common App will help you with that. We can even ask questions around that if you guys want later. And then you kind of just keep working through it. I would say the two most cumbersome, maybe the three most cumbersome measures that I've found over time, and again, we've been doing this for years, so it is a little easier after you do it a few times, are certainly the energy, the resources, and the water sections are probably one of the ones that are most not math heavy, but numbers heavy, like needing to find information on your project. While the rest are, I would say, much more just answering correctly questions about the design you did whenever you did it. Probably the hardest part of that is remembering, because you're at the point of submitting for awards, you probably did all this work years and years ago. And I would say that if any of my staff were here that helped me with these award submissions, they would probably say that's the hardest part, is digging back through what we actually did to answer some of those questions outside of those three more numerically based measures. So that's what the Common App looks like. Doesn't take too long to do it, in kind of in comparison to what you're going to be doing already for award submission. I just wanted to share that. If people have questions about the other two tools, which again are both accessible for free from AIA, we can look at those too if you want, but essentially it's asking the exact same stuff, just in a different interface or a different format for a spreadsheet. But I think that maybe now we can open it up for questions, Kelly, if people have them, and I can go back to other parts of either the presentation or just leave it on this for now as people have questions.
Sure. And feel free to just ask your question, or you can put it in the chat as well if you are more comfortable with that, and we will answer.
Hi, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Go ahead, Helen.
Hi, I'm Helen. For unbuilt projects for the student section, I'm assuming that we would just fill out the narrative part for unbuilt projects. Is that correct?
That's a Kelly question. I would assume yes.
Yeah,
I don't know that answer.
Yeah. No, Helen, you do have the option to submit using the Common App for a student unbuilt as well. I believe last year there was only one who submitted in that format. But otherwise, yeah, you would just fill in that narrative and what you have. I believe, I wish I had it right now, but the application last year that was student unbuilt who used Common App, they had made it clear was, projected what they anticipated it to be to kind of play out the full narrative. But
yeah,
you can.
One thing I will say too is that if you get to those three categories where there is both an input for modeled and measured data, there is always an option to say that you do not have measured data. I would imagine that even a lot of the completed work will not have measured data. For those of you that are interested in this answer, I'll just expand upon that. If you ever have the intent to submit for a COTE Top 10 award at national, you are required to have measured data. The building has to have been occupied for at least a year, and you have to have measured data. That's why that design awards program has no unbuilt category. But in this one, because we have that category and because we don't require measured data in the Common App, you will have the opportunity to not report in those sections.
So I'll answer a couple of questions from the chat. So one is about this Friday, the 27th, deadline for just registration. Early bird pricing for registering to enter is through this Friday at, I guess, 11:59 p.m. this Friday. You will have the ability to go back in and put your materials in. So if you just want to register, get the early bird payment set by this Friday, that's totally fine. And you'll have until March 15th to go back in and complete putting all your submission information and materials together. Another question, got a couple more. What is the preferred AIA method of entry? So this is the second year that the Common App has been used in these design awards. And so we're leaving it up to you all to decide how you would like to. It does, the general trend and shift and in aligning with AIA National will eventually be to just be using the Common App. So I know that's not the best answer, but either submission is acceptable. We aren't necessarily encouraging one way or the other, as preference. Are the jury, like Tim mentioned, we have a technical juror with our, and then the other 4 jurors are practicing architects. And so they might not even always be familiar with the Common App. So that's something that we explain to them and we go over with our jurors as well in advance. And again, that's why the technical juror is there. Okay, so blank spaces, how much do any blank spaces in the application hurt the overall submission? Um, I, I'm not really sure. I don't really know how to answer that one well. I do recall seeing some common applications last year that not all the sections were filled out or it was an NA, but again, those were projects that were one in particular was part of a hospital. And so certain areas, they knew like the resources was going to be really intense, or certain areas, there just wasn't an applicable answer. I don't know if that hurt their application or not. That's kind of hard to say. What do you think, Tim? Do you have any kind of insight?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just describe it from the lens of someone who's had to be a technical juror, be a design juror with other technical jurors on the jury in many, many occasions. And even maybe think about, what my role is on the current National Architecture Award jury. I think that the jury is always, it's up to the jury to decide what they feel is an appropriate level of information on submittal. I would think about it like almost like a college application or something like that. It's like you have to be authentic to the project. Like if you truly don't have the information, I would encourage you to not make it up, because the technical juror is definitely experienced enough to know if you did. So I would recommend leaving it blank instead of trying to kind of quickly come up with information that will be kind of immediately dismissed because it's obviously not accurate. I wouldn't recommend doing that. The technical juror, though, also has the capacity to explain and the kind of role to explain to the design jury, the rest of the design jury who's not familiar, why a certain type of project might not be capable of scoring high in a certain measure, right? So I would really trust the process on that, because it is very true. Like those of us that get selected to sit on these juries in a technical role are selected because we know that we can provide that guidance. So the technical juror is going to know if you're making stuff up, but they're also going to know if you're working on a project that's like, say, highly energy intensive and has a really difficult time scoring well on that category. Like say you're designing a hospital or a lab or something like that. I would not see that as a barrier to entry. I would just kind of trust that, we took that role as a design committee seriously, that having a technical juror helps serve both of those categories so that it would aid in the use of the Common App for those that do it. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Next question is requirements for images. So 10 images to submit. The first image that you upload in your suite of images, will keep in mind that that is the image that we will use for displaying when we put together our scrolls and posters that for every single project submitted, that's the image we'll use. So put your desired featured photo first. You can upload very large, very high res files. I would say, just from experience working out in the back end, high res JPEG or PDF are actually the best format to use. Those ended up being a lot better to work with all around, and probably will be for you. File size, I'm going to look up what the max file size per image is right now, and then so if other folks have questions, I'm going to look that up, and then I'll put that in the chat so people know. Anybody else have any questions right now that we can field?
I have a question. This is Jessie Carroll. Hi,
Hey,
Kelli,
Jessie.
Kim.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. Eating lunch, so I'm not going to show my face. It's been a really long time since I've submitted for an award, and I was trying to gain assistance from a colleague. And relative to images, I thought at one point there was like a guideline, like you need one site plan with a north arrow, and you need a section and floor plans. And when I went to log in and I just saw, a space for X amount of images, but no real criteria. Am I just looking in the wrong place or what's going on
No,
there?
that should be listed somewhere there too, but I believe it's listed in the prospectus for the call for submissions. But I can make note of that, Jesse, and put that on the back end because I did have some categories not showing up initially, which is all set now, but this is my I'll tell you all, it's my first time on the back end of this awards platform, and it is running well, but there's a couple of things that are not intuitive. So I'll check on the images and the requirements. If not, I will send that out to everybody and update that. Because there are specific images beyond just the amount 10 that you will want.
Great.
Okay, and here we do have in the prospectus, and I'll put this a link to this in the chat for those who haven't found it on our website yet. Let's see. Each digital slide must be 6 megabytes or less. JPEG is the preferred format. A composition of drawings, images, and other illustrations may constitute one digital slide as long as the composition complies with all other submission requirements. Entry must include a minimum of a site plan, including north arrow and graphic scale, floor plans, and one building section, if applicable to the project. And again, I'll put this file right in the chat for everybody as well. And this is.
So Kelly, where were you reading that from?
That's from the design prospectus that is on the website. It's on our website. And then when you go to Open Water, it's available there as well.
So is it not within the application itself? Because I think that's where I was looking for it.
Yeah, it's not within the Open Water section itself then. There is a way to put that information, to list that information in Open Water though.
I think it would be beneficial to have it where you're uploading images personally.
So that people can see that. Yeah.
Or I can just try to figure out where you're reading from and send that along to.
Yep. So I just put this in the chat there, and that is page.
Perfect.
What page is that? So on the 4th page of the document that I put in the chat for everybody, that's where you'll find the information on photographs. That's going to be on the right-hand side. But that's correct. That information is not in Open Water. And I'll see if I can put that. I'm pretty sure I can add a text box to that page. And when you're going through an Open Water, using the system, if you do have any issues with any drop downs or any specific tools that don't seem to be working, just send me an email anytime, because some of it is kind of clunky. And when you go through the drop downs, after professional, you'll receive another drop down selecting design awards, common application or not common application. And then after that, a third drop down, and you can pick your specific subcategory. And our subcategories are single family residence, multifamily housing, institutional and commercial, renovation and adaptive reuse, small projects, which is $500,000 or less for the budget. And then Architrave had its own jury in previous years. Architrave is now just one of our general subcategories this year. And then if you are submitting professional unbuilt, you'll have that option in the top drop down. So each one of those drop downs will bring you right through to the correct chain of categories and subcategories, depending on the application and the subcategory. The architrave category is, Tim, would you like to explain the architrave category? I think you could do it better than I can.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Maybe we
I'll
both
try
can.
to. We need we need the other members of the design jury on for this. But
No, a couple of
basically
us can make it.
the architrave category is essentially it's a parallel track awards program that is designed to specifically encourage submission of projects that are representative of stylistically traditional or vernacular architecture in the state of Maine. So you can take that for what you will. I think that generally we've only had it for 2 years. This is the third year. So I would say that, it's a subjective question internally for each of your firms as to whether a project you feel actually, is better represented by that category than the open submission category. But the goal there was to try to make sure there was a spot for firms that were engaging in that, rich history of design in the state of Maine, traditionally styled. So beyond that, I don't really know, because the awarded projects have been sometimes transitional in nature, maybe not explicitly traditional, but kind of were within the bounds of what I just described. I did the best I could, Kelly.
That was really good. That was a little bit to do. No, that's very good. And like Tim mentioned, it had its there was a separate jury specifically for that category the last 2 years, but because it's something that we'd like to keep within our categories, we did work on putting together a jury that will also be able to judge all varieties of architecture, including architrave, not just a specific, group.
I have another question if someone else doesn't, while we have Tim's attention and knowing he's an expert in these things. The calculation part, from building performance stuff. So I guess if we could I haven't gone into it, so I don't want to waste people's time, but to give a specific example, we did have it energy modeled. We did have it show compliance against code or how much is exceeding code, and then like our HERS rater code. Like what are the inputs they're looking for here?
Yeah. So basically, the formulas that are embedded within this spreadsheet are all drawn from these kind of main inputs at the beginning of the spreadsheet, basically just the raw project information. So if you're accurately inputting, say, the floor area, and from your energy modeling, whatever software you used or whoever did the energy model, if you can give it the total annual power usage, then it will do the math into EUI for you. So whether EUI, energy usage intensity, is the numeric value that AIA uses across the board for all of our assessment of, say, energy performance. So that is just kBTU per square foot per year. All it's asking you is to know what the total energy usage was. It's also going to ask you whether that energy was electrical, whether it was fossil fuel based, or a combination of both. But if you can provide that level of information, it will do the rest of the math for you. You do not need to put in, say, a HERS score in here. You do not need to put in a measured energy usage. So, again, as I've mentioned earlier, if you were submitting for Code Top 10, you would have to put in both, or you wouldn't be considered for the award, both a modeled energy usage and also at least 1 year of documented energy usage, and it would do the same calculation and see how accurate it was, right? We don't have that second part here. All you got to do is put in that modeled information. So if you had a client move in and just plug in 18 refrigerators and run them all year long, no worries. It's not going to affect your award submission. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not a ton of calculations you actually have to do. In fact, as long as you have the raw data, most of the calculations are entirely done for you by the spreadsheet, and they're all just dividing back into this project information here in the top. So it's pretty pared down.
What's the difference between UA and UI?
UA and UI.
I don't know.
I
I'm
don't
looking at
know
this
what you
energy
mean.
report and there's UA everywhere and UA compliance.
Why don't you send it to me over email and we'll take it offline.
Okay.
I don't know what you're looking at. That's the problem. But I probably could. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
talk. Or I'm going to see you tomorrow. We can talk
Yeah.
tomorrow.
I'll bring some literature.
All right. Sounds good. I'm just going to quickly, while we wait, just show Jesse, like this is the area you would input the total energy here. So in the gray areas are the fillable, and then the calculation is done for you. And if you had, say, a mix of natural gas and electricity, you'd fill out more. You can even fill out more. You could have multiple fuels, like say it had wood heat as well. You know, there's a whole bunch of different options here. But it's just, you just have to put in the one number and everything else is calculated for you. It even calculates it. It even does the conversion from, say, kilowatt hours into BTUs. So if it's just a matter of going from imperial to, from metric to imperial, that's done internally. If it's a matter of going from therms of total natural gas into kBTU, that's done internally. You really just need the kind of raw, requirements, and that's it. Same goes in the resources section. If there's anybody in the call that's doing LCA and has that information, you really just need to put in your total boundary to boundary kgCO2e that you're getting out of whatever LCA software you're using. Everything else is calculated. You have on all of them the opportunity to expand on that if you want. You can see that here. You know, we did a description that actually broke that down into different components within the LCA, but you don't need to do that. It's not a requirement.
So this is an award-winning spider graph. What is it the closer towards the middle, it's like not working well in your favor?
Yeah. So the further you get in the to the center and any of the individual vectors, you will it's like not as compliant a spider graph. But I will just tell you, like, we've had projects that have won national awards that don't have as smooth a spider graph as this. You will not necessarily, like, you know, we're in Maine, right? Likely your equitable communities score, it scored well here on this one, mainly because of certain criteria that it was able to meet. But most projects don't score well in that category in a remote setting. That is not a deal breaker at all. I had to tell collaborators this sometimes. I was like, don't get sucked into the spider graph too much. It's really fun because you can like try to make it like, what would I have to do to make it like a circle, you know? And that is cool. That's part of the reason that Coat National put this in, is so that it would help gamify it a little bit. But it's challenging for some projects to actually get them all the way to the edge. So I wouldn't necessarily assume that because your spider graph isn't a circle that it is going to not be an award-winning project.
I wish I had a few of those scrolls handy from last year here. I know that there were a couple spider graphs that did have dents within them that still won awards last year.
Yeah. It's not uncommon, especially again in Maine, where you might not be able to kind of meet the kind of community part of it because of the program or because of, and oftentimes, let's just say I've had a bunch of people on the call might be submitting in the single family residential category. If you are, a lot of times when I'm a technical jury on that category, I just tell the other jurors, we should just be ignoring the community's measure entirely, because there's no questions in there that a single family residents are going to probably be capable of scoring high on, in just because of the nature of the program. That's the biggest one. That I know people are always like, when they do it for the first time, they're like, oh my God, like there's no way I could, and that's okay. I would definitely not let any one of these scare you off using the tool.
I also noticed a client authorization form was required. Is that something like there's a form that they actually fill out, or the client just has to write a statement?
We do have a form for that. Let me just pull that up here.
I'm gonna stop sharing so you can share that.
Yeah, let me find that. Let's see. And that, I believe, is a standard form that folks have been using across AIA.
I think I made the mistake of jumping right into the application instead of reading all of the supplementary information that you guys so kindly provided to assist in the process. And so if it's not in the online like application itself,
Yeah, then
I
it's
feel like folks like myself aren't finding it. So
right. If
as
you're
much
not,
as you can upload into the application itself, the better.
yeah, on the open water. And I will tell you, it is not the best platform that I think. Well, it's probably the best one to be using, but it's kind of clunky. So it might take me about a day to get it set up there, but I will. And what I can do too is I put the link in the chat for the just our awards website, which has links to the common application you can download. It has links to the eligibility rules and details. It has a link to the Open Water website to register your account or go back in and work on your submissions. But I will put the client authorization form on that web page as well. And then I'll also see if I can find a spot in Open Water to put it. But it's a standard general form that is used across AIA. So I'll look and see if it's on the component connection website too. If I can find that before our time ends, I'll put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'll put it in those locations later today.
Quick question on that form. We have in our base contract, like the right to use images for marketing and whatnot. Do you need the release as a supplemental document, or is it
Nope.
is that okay?
No, that's fine. And yeah, there's a spot for you to put in the credits for your photographer. So, or whoever was doing the photography. So that's fine. So everybody on the call is entering. Yes.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So I just want to clarify that last question. So if it's in your contracts that you're allowed to use the projects for marketing and awards, then you don't need to reach out to your client to do this authorization form?
The authorization form really is in, if you, and one thing, if folks that haven't done this before, we put together an awards book. So every submission, awards in the beginning, and then every single submission goes into this book. But there is, for awards in the beginning, there is a section where the clients can be listed or not. So I believe the form pertains to the clients wanting their names and the town to remain anonymous, or they will authorize you to. And if that's the case, they don't want you to, then it's just, mid-coast region or in a general area. Otherwise, it can, if they want their names listed, they can have their names listed, and then their town. So I believe that's what it pertains mostly to in this case.
Hi, so you wouldn't necessarily need that form then for an unbuilt project?
Correct. For an unbuilt project, you wouldn't need that form.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. And no, I don't have that as easily found as I thought. I thought I had sent it to somebody very recently, but I did not. So I'll put that in the information. We did also record this for our design committee, but if folks would like to receive a recording of it, we'll send that as well. And with that, I can send the link too, just to make sure everyone has it. Or you can look on the website and keep checking. But I know that, but if everybody reads the prospectus, that would be really good too. Okay, good. I do the same thing though. If I had to set this up, I would go right to what I was doing. I don't look at the instructions when I build things always.
No, I mean, if you've done it a zillion times over the years.
Exactly.
So I just want to go back, and I'm sorry I'm harping on this, but it seems like the client authorization is more about publicity, like public announcement of who the client is and where it's located. It has nothing to do with a situation we were in years past where a project was submitted and the client didn't want it submitted to begin with. This is really more about disclosing who the client is.
Yeah, client disclosure. Well, and I guess, once I find the form and read through it again too, I can fully answer that. But I would imagine that, like Justin, you were mentioning before, if you're able to use if you already have permission to be using the project for marketing purposes and photography purposes, using that information image, then they've probably already said yes to that portion. And so this really just kind of covers the basis of the, I guess the personal identity sort of protection.
Well, one other thing I would say, because and again, I haven't read this specific one for AIA Maine in a while, but
Yeah.
For when you have to do this, there's a similar form you have to do for national awards. It allows the organization AIA to have rights for publication, rights for marketing extended to them. So like Jesse, while our contracts, if we're using an AIA agreement, allow us to do that, they don't offer us to extend legally. I know this would probably never happen. They don't legally offer us to extend those rights to AIA without authorization. So like if AIA published who won the awards, regardless of whether they submit the names or not, that image content is still technically not ours to offer. So that's my understanding as well, is that it extends that that right to AIA Maine.
Mm.
So if you go to the AIA Maine website and it's like, here are the award winners, no client's going to be like, why is that there? I don't know. I know that the chances of that happening are almost zero because of what they've already think that they've agreed to. But my understanding is it's just checking that legal box.
Yeah, you'd think that the photographer would care more if it was their photo being published nationally without their more than the client, but anyway.
Yeah, and that is my experience in practice as well.
Yeah.
But I think technically we don't have the right to do that, even with an AIA agreement. So my understanding is that is also its role. But anyway, Kelly, I got to jump to another meeting, okay. But
well, if there's any last question, we'll let Tim go, and I will field any last questions folks have. Oh, good, you're welcome. And just look for a follow-up email later today with a link to the video, and then and I will keep looking for that form so that everyone has it. And feel free to email me with any of your questions. I'm happy to answer them, or if there's an issue with something, just let me know. All right, thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon, everyone.